This video will be on Chapter 3, Lesson 3-1, Parallel Lines and Transversals. The first few vocabulary words are on this slide. Parallel lines are coplanar lines that do not intersect. So line JK and line LM are parallel. We can say line JK is parallel to line LM. Please notice the symbol of two parallel lines in the center. Also, please notice that if there are two matching triangles pointing in the same direction with the same number, that means those lines are parallel. Skew lines are lines that do not intersect and are not coplanar. So for example, L is on this plane A and M is on this plane B. They are skew lines because they will never intersect. Parallel planes are planes that do not intersect, if you think about the floor and the ceiling or opposite walls in a room. So here is an example. Name all the segments that are parallel to BC. Well, the first thing you want to do is find BC. Segment BC is right here. So all of the segments that are parallel will be the segments that will never intersect and are on the same plane. So those segments will be DA, FG, and EH because they are all going in the same direction. We can also talk about segments that are skewed to EH. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find segment EH. We now want to find a segment that is not on the same plane and will never intersect. So DEHA is the same plane, so none of the lines over here are going to be skew. The skew lines are going to be on opposite sides, going in opposite directions. EH is vertical, CF and BG are horizontal, and they are not in the same plane. They will never intersect. Additionally, I know that DC and AB are also not in the same plane and will never intersect with EH. This is how we write those segments. Additionally, we want to name a plane that is parallel to plane ABG. Well, plane ABG is this plane that is on the bottom. So since it is on the bottom, we will use the plane that is on the top. Now, if you notice, there are 4 letters here to choose from. We only use 3 of them, and we say it is plane CDE because we pick the letters in alphabetical order. So we say this is plane CDE. Now it is your turn to practice. Two lines divide the plane into 3 regions. So if we think about the screen as a plane and we have our 2 lines here, I can divide this into 3 regions. The first region is the interior, which is between the 2 lines, and the other 2 segments become the exterior because they are on the outside of the 2 lines. When a transversal intersects 2 lines, 8 angles are formed. The transversal is line T because it is the line that crosses the other 2 lines. So again, the transversal is line T because it crosses both line L and line M. These angles have special names and relationships. Now, this will not always be called angle 1 and this will not always be called angle 2, but the relationships remain consistent. The first type of angles that we have are interior angles. Interior angles lie between the 2 parallel lines. So we say angles 3, 4, 5, and 6 are on the interior of lines L and M. That means that we also have exterior angles. Exterior angles lie outside of the 2 parallel lines. So 1, 2, 7, and 8 are exterior because they are on the outside of L and on the outside of M. We can further divide these into angles known as alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are on the opposite sides of the transversal. So here we have angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles. They are on alternate sides of the transversal, which means opposite sides of the transversal, and they are between lines L and M. Hence, they are quite literally alternate interior angles. The other pair of alternate interior angles would be 3 and 5. This leads us to alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are on the opposite sides of the transversal. So I have angle 1 and angle 7. They are on opposite sides of the transversal and they are outside of the parallel lines. Angle 1 and angle 7 are alternate exterior angles. I also have angle 2 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles. Another classification I have is consecutive interior angles. Alternate means on opposite sides. Consecutive interior angles mean that they are on the same side of the transversal and they are interior, which means they are between the parallel lines. Consecutive literally means in a row. So I have 4 and 5 are next to each other and they are in between the parallel lines. That also means that angles 3 and 6 are considered consecutive interior angles because they are between the parallel lines and they are right next to each other. If you notice a little question mark down here, think about why we don't have consecutive exterior angles. Well, we don't have consecutive exterior angles because angles 1 and 8 are not consecutive because 4 and 5 are between them. Angles 2 and 7 are not consecutive because angles 3 and 6 are between them. Angle 1 and 4 are technically consecutive, but if we think back to what we learned in Chapter 2, the better name for angles 1 and 4 are linear pair. They are supplementary. Angles 1 and 2 are supplementary. Angles 8 and 7 are supplementary because they form a linear pair. Additionally, angle 2 and angle 4 are still considered vertical angles. What we learned before doesn't go away. We are simply adding to our terms. When a transversal crosses two lines, the intersection creates a number of angles that are related to each other. We have already learned about interior and exterior angles on the previous slide. Note angle 1 and angle 5. Although one is an exterior angle and the other one is an interior angle, both lie on the same side of the transversal. Angle 1 and angle 5 are called corresponding angles. Note that they are in the same location, the top left of each intersection. These are called corresponding angles. There are 3 other pairs of corresponding angles that are formed. 4 and 8 are corresponding angles. Notice that they are both on the bottom on the left. 3 and 7 are both considered to be corresponding angles, and 2 and 6 are considered pairs of corresponding angles. We want to classify the relationship between angle 2 and angle 6 as alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, or consecutive interior. If we look at our picture, angle 2 is here and angle 6 is here. Well, 2 is on the interior of A and B, and 6 is on the exterior. That means that they are corresponding angles because one is on the interior, one is on the exterior, and they are in the same basic location. We also now want to classify the relationship between 1 and 7. Angle 1 is on the exterior of line A, angle 7 is on the exterior of line B, and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. Therefore, they will be alternate exterior angles. If I look at the relationship between 3 and 8, they are interior and they are right next to each other, which means that they will be consecutive interior angles. I also want to classify the relationship between 3 and 5. 3 is on the interior, 5 is on the interior, and they are on alternate sides of line C, which is my transversal. Therefore, they are considered alternate interior angles. Now it is your turn. Identify the transversal connecting angle 1 and angle 2, then identify the relationship between the pair of angles. So the first thing we want to do is find angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 and angle 2 are sharing this line, which means that line V is the transversal. Line V crosses line X and line S, therefore angle 1 is on the exterior, angle 2 is on the interior. That means that the transversal connecting 1 and 2 is line V, and they are corresponding angles. So now I want to look at angle 2 and angle 3. Well, angle 2 is on this side of line V, and angle 3 is on this side of line V. That means that line V is my transversal, and because they are in between line S and line X, that means that they are interior, and because they are on opposite sides of the transversal, they are alternate interior angles, and line V is the transversal. If I look at 4 and 5, well, angle 4 and angle 5 are both on line Y, which means that that is my transversal. They are between T and W. They are both on the interior, but they are on the same side of the line, which means that they are consecutive interior angles. Now it is your turn. That concludes the notes for section 3-1, parallel lines and transversals. Students oftentimes ask me how they can learn this material, and the only way to learn these definitions is to memorize them. There is no shortcut. We will be doing algebraic calculations with them later, and in order to understand what goes on in the future, you must memorize these definitions. Feel free to bring any questions or concerns you may have to class.